So Joe Rogan had Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey on, and Joe's getting lambasted by his fans for his treatment of Dorsey in the interview and the fact that he basically allegedly just softballed questions to him. A lot of people are saying that Rogan sold out. So if you look at the ratio right now, the video has about 5.5 or 5,500 upvotes and something like 34,000 downvotes. So that's a really bad ratio. And it's not just that people outside that aren't Rogan's fans that are upset about this. It's like his hardcore, constant supporting fans that are really upset about this. And that's why Rogan might be in some trouble, because he didn't just upset random people that aren't going to watch his show anyways. He upset his biggest core supporters. What they're upset about is, here's this guy, Joe Rogan supposedly stands for free speech, the intellectual dark web, and all that stuff. He's had a lot of personal friends or personal people on the podcast that have been censored by people like Dorsey and Twitter. And so this was a chance for Joe Rogan to be like, what's going on with this? Stick up for his friends and things like that. Instead, Rogan just seeks to softball the entire interview. Now, it's hard to look and say, here's a specific time that you could look at and see exactly what I'm talking about. I didn't watch the entirety of the video, but I did watch a lot of the parts, and I got to see a lot of what people were upset about. So, for example, around 20 minutes, you see Joe Rogan ask about, what's the terms of service when it comes to doxing people? What about the Covington kids? You actually had people like Kathy Griffin specifically call for the doxing of these kids, which resulted in threats and such. And Jack Dorsey gives a non-answer. He's just like, yeah, it's something we're working on. We're trying to do better. And, it's a lot. And then Rogan helps him out by, he's like, yeah, didn't you, get rid of the account that originally had the original, 40-second clip of the yeah. Dorsey's like, we did. Oh, how does that work? So it's like, Rogan not only allows him to sidestep the question and the crux of it by this BS answer, but then he further facilitates and helps him along. And it's that type of thing. It's not just that Rogan didn't ask the difficult questions. It's that it almost seems, if you look at it totally in context, which I encourage everyone to do before they make up their mind, that it's Rogan kind of purposely trying to help Jack along and be like, yeah, you're doing great, don't worry about it. And allowing Jack to get away with these meandering arguments. So I basically came up with a list of 5 reasons I think people were so upset about this. And by people, I mean Joe Rogan supporters. The first are, and I think this is a very low proportion of people, but that are upset with the guests Rogan's had on, and Dorsey's kind of a combination of that. So Joe's been having more mainstream journalist type guests. For example, I believe her name was Barry Weiss he had on from the New York Times. You have people like Dorsey and other people that seem to be kind of in this group that's supposedly censoring the online personalities like Joe Rogan. I mean, you have to understand, the appeal of Joe Rogan was, for a lot of his fans, is he's kind of a pioneer, and he did this podcast, and it was where you could go to hear all these voices that the mainstream media wouldn't talk about. And Joe was edgy, and now it seems like the exact opposite. He's having these guests on where, it's basically the people that he was supposedly fighting against, and his crowd wanted people to fight against, that are all about being gatekeepers of knowledge, not wanting people like Joe Rogan to exist, and having alternative media, censoring people off their platforms. Now, personally, I don't have a problem with Rogan having these people on, as long as he has some pushback with them. That's fine. But Rogan should, any good interviewer, I think, or person with a channel like this, should have people of multiple perspectives. So I don't think that's a big deal, but I do think that some people are a little upset about that. One of the biggest deals, though, is the double standards with how Joe does interviews. So this is the same thing that you get all throughout the media, all throughout our intel agencies, our government. What upsets me the most is the double standard. So, for example, take the intel agencies. That's fine. You want to start charging people with lying to Congress or lying to the FBI? Fine, great. It's a law, charge them. But they selectively do it. When it's people connected to Trump, they go at him as hard as possible, raid their house in the middle of the night, bring more people than Osama bin Laden, all holding assault rifles. When it's people connected to Hillary, they offer to smash their devices for them, give them all immunity, allow them to walk free even when they destroy subpoenaed evidence, allow them to lie to the FBI, never charge anyone, etc. It's those double standards that make people upset. I think that gut feeling is what you get with Joe Rogan as well. So if he has Steven Crowder on, or Gavin McInnes, or Milo, or Nick DiPaolo, he's going to go at them hard. Which is fine. No one minds that. Just like with the media. I want a media that pushes back at people. So I have no problem with Rogan being like, whoa, and pushing back at people. That's fine. The problem is when he has very similar characters on the left, he just kind of treats them with adulation and doesn't seem to push back as much. And that's fine also. He could do whatever he wants with the show, but it's going to upset some of his core supporters because a lot of his core supporters are people that are upset with this double standard and how people are treated in the first place. And Rogan, who's supposed to be this alternative to that where you could go and hear other voices, they're like, well, wait a minute. You're kind of, even though you're bringing these other voices on, which is good, you're treating them more hostile than the exact same mainstream voices that other people are coming here to avoid. So could you please have a similar tone with all of your audiences? And it seems that's not happening. So again, that's fine. But what's particularly heinous in this situation, I think, to many people, and what I find to be kind of bad with this double standard is Jack Dorsey represents everything that Joe Rogan is supposedly against. So Joe Rogan's big thing is like free speech, bringing on other voices, things like that. So it's one thing if he has a leftist comedian on or a leftist pundit and he doesn't push back that hard. Okay, maybe not the best thing for like me or his core group of supporters, but that's fine. He's an individual. Maybe he leans more that way. That's fine for him to do that. It's not being impartial or unbiased, but I don't think Joe claims to be unbiased. But when your big issue is, I'm tired of this censorship. I'm tired of voices. We need to have a dialogue and things like that. And you get on one of the most responsible people for having this censorship and ending a dialogue, and you just softball him questions the whole time? Like, that's a really bad look, and it upsets people. A lot of people tuned into this and were like, finally. So, because the media won't interview Dorsey. They won't ask him difficult questions. The guy never does. People like him and Zuckerberg, none of them. They never have to answer difficult questions. And if they get called in front of Congress and someone does deign to ask them a difficult question, they could just lie with impunity. They don't have to worry that they'll be frog marched out like Roger Stone or something. No, 18 people aren't going to show up to Zuckerberg's house with M16s or whatever, ARs, because he lied to Congress. That won't happen. That's just reserved for people that like Trump, So finally, you're like, here we go. One of these people that run these tech companies that are censoring people, finally someone's going to ask them difficult questions. And Rogan not only barely asks any difficult questions, but he basically facilitates Jack Dorsey's BS and escaping whatever difficult questions he asks. Again, like the Covington story, like it's damning. They're talking about terms of service. And Dorsey before this is actually saying, he's like, one of the things we need to do is right now we have the copyright is the number one terms of service. And below that's like people's safety, like don't dox people, don't threaten people. And we should reverse the order to let people know that safety is our most important concern. And then 30 seconds later, he's making excuses for why Kathy Griffin was able to dox children. Or why all these blue checkmark people were able to threaten these kids. Say, put them in wood chippers, this, that, and the other. Enough credible threats that the school actually had to shut down. So the lesson learned, the double standard on Twitter is now being shown on the Joe Rogan show itself, where Joe has this double standard. Oh, Nick DiPaolo, a fellow comedian, come at him hard, man. Oh, someone who's just a mild conservative. Yeah, we're going to come hard at him. Steven Crowder, we'll have a big argument with him, and etc. But Jack Dorsey, the person censoring the very thing that Rogan's supposed to be against, Rogan helps him by being further double standard. That's what upset a lot of people. And if you read the comments, it's brutal. I mean, there's 30-something thousand comments on on this video, on Rogan's official page, and no one's defending Rogan. Like, you got a small like literally maybe a dozen comments defending Joe, and 30,000. Again, I mean, it's bad. And it's because his core fan understand. They understand how disgusting this was. So, the third reason is, it kind of goes along with that second reason, but a lot of people think that this shows Joe Rogan's true character, because a lot of people that have been kicked off of Twitter and have been banned from like all social media are people that Rogan would call his friends. The best example of this is Alex Jones. Rogan had Alex Jones on before. Rogan's talked about how he's been friends with Alex Jones for a long, long time, or at least been acquaintance and been friendly with him. And Rogan won't have Alex Jones back on the show because he's like, oh, I just gotta leave stuff blow over and leave stuff blow over. And so that upset a lot of his fans, even if they didn't like Alex Jones. It's like, whoa, man, your entire point's to be taking a stand against these big tech companies. You're the alt media. You're the intellectual dark web. You're supposed to say, nah, we're not going to leave people be depersoned. Get them on here. Let's hear their point of view. But Rogan, for his own friend, was like, no. He also did this with like Owen Benjamin, where Owen Benjamin's a comedian that was his friend. And, Owen got a lot of flack for stuff. Basically just, he's been kicked off Twitter. And Owen's basically just a comedian. He's over the line. He talks a lot of like, what people might consider inappropriate jokes. I think that a lot of what he does is funny. But they had a falling out, and Rogan supposedly, I don't know if this is true, But a lot of Rogan's fans are saying that basically Joe tells his guests, don't even mention Owen Benjamin. We don't even want to mention. And Owen's been talking, as has Alex Jones, about, look, Rogan's a sellout. He's he's controlled opposition. He pretends to be this like open free speech person, but in reality, based on like who he won't have on the show, how hard he'll go against people that are conservative and maybe populist versus how easy and how pandering he is to people that are more the globalist or the censorship type people, and that it would play out. And a lot of those people today, the Alex Jones fans of the Owen Benjamin, even people that aren't their fans, were like, wow, yeah, those people have a point. And it just shows a lot of people the character like, wow, you were willing to sell your friends out. And that's a really bad look. I don't know if that's true. Rogan might be able to stand up and talk about why that's not the case. But certainly he went soft on Dorsey, that's true. And at this point, the perception, what I'm discussing is why Rogan's fans are upset. And they are upset about that. So that's another thing. Now, people are also upset, maybe, why did this occur? What are the reasons? So you have people, how much money did you get paid by Dorsey? Well, I don't think it's that simple, but there are a lot of credible arguments you could have as to why Rogan would do something like this. The first is maybe Rogan's just biased. Maybe he just is more left-wing. Maybe he doesn't care as much as he pretended to about free speech and stuff like that. Maybe he was intimidated by Jack Dorsey. I don't know. But there are some credible things. Like, for one, Rogan has sponsors. Now, one of the things that used to be... Oh, and I wanted to talk about this quickly before we get to the sponsors. Rogan used to have sponsors like the Fleshlight and other, sex toys used to be his sponsors. Because what made Rogan famous, I think, to a lot of his fan base, yeah, he was on shows like News Radio, which I really like News Radio. He was on Fear Factor. But the thing that really got him big with the crowd that likes him, I think, was when he came at Carlos Mencia for stealing jokes. And that was kind of this edgy, in-your-face guy that was like, I'm not going to take any crap. Then he starts this podcast, and it was the same mentality. It was like dirty. It was independent. It was like, yeah, we're not going to take crap. Joe Rogan, he'll tell it like it is. He'll yell at people. People like that. You get people on, have all kinds of crazy people on talking about all kinds of crazy stuff. Rogan would be friendly, but, he'd come at people. It was that edginess that people liked. Now it's the exact opposite. He looked like a pushover. You could have had a more difficult interview could have been had with Jack Dorsey by literally anyone I know, many of who have never used Twitter, and they would be able to be like, yeah, give me a 5-minute rundown. Your platform's kicking off people predominantly on one side. Can you explain that? Well, blah, blah, blah. How do you leave people on that have death threats to kids? That's it. That would have been a harder interview from people that know nothing about Twitter. So a lot of people are upset about that. Anyways, one of Rogan's sponsors is this like Cash Square app or something. And apparently Dorsey is invested in that, or is one of the leaders of that. And so a lot of people are insinuating that, so here's someone who's basically in charge or high up in one of the companies that is a direct sponsor of Joe Rogan. So he shouldn't have done this interview in the first place, because then it puts Rogan in the awkward position of, if he comes at this guy hard, he loses one of his big sponsors. So it would be better not to do the interview and be honest about it than to just pander to the guy and be like, yay, I continue to keep my sponsor. So that's what a lot of people are saying. And then, there's a lot of people saying, and there could be some truth to this, Rogan lives in California. I think he definitely leans more left-wing than right-wing on a lot of issues. He probably is dealing with people in California that are extremely, famous people that are extremely left-wing, that extremely hate Trump. Maybe he wants more bona fides with them. When him and his wife go out, they're tired of getting argued that, you're alt-right or something like that. So now it's like, oh, yeah, you chilled for Jack Dorsey. Good job. Maybe he was thinking that. Or even more likely, maybe he was thinking, I want to get in good with Twitter. Joe Rogan's become the opposite of what he started as. He's now the epitome of trying to become mainstream, a lot of people think. Where that's his strength, and his success was, finally, someone with an alternative voice to oppose the mainstream. And now, it's like that old story. What if all these music legends didn't die? What if Hendrix didn't die? Would he be doing Cheerios commercials or something today? Who knows? But that's what it seems like. Did Rogan's show get too big? Now he's too popular? Now he can't be edgy? He's mainstream, basically. He's just CNN light. I mean, that's what a lot of people are saying. And the last reason that people are really, really upset is there's an accusation that Rogan is deleting comments from his YouTube page. Now, I don't know specifically that it would be Rogan individually that would do this, because he hires a, I don't know what you call it, his tech guy, Jamie. It seems like this would be more something Jamie would do, managing the actual page. Rogan's probably busier. I don't think he's sitting there reading his Facebook or his YouTube quotes going, all right, delete this, delete this. But his tech guy might be. I don't know if these comments are deleted. Here's the problem. There are over 30,000 comments at the time of this video. What is known as this. Originally, when this video came out, the two of the highest comments, top-rated comments, were from Sargon of Akkad and from Mark Dice, both of who are blue checkmark people that are more kind of alt-media type people. Neither of these comments were offensive, name-calling. Most of them weren't even insulting towards Rogan. The Sargon comment that was the top comment said something to the effect of, hey, Jack, you say that social media is a right for everyone, then how can you justify removing people from it? Basically. That comment had thousands of upvotes, somehow disappears. Then Mark Dice had like the second comment, and his comment wasn't directed towards Joe either. It was basically, Dorsey claims, Rogan asked Dorsey why Alex Jones got suspended, and Dorsey claims, I have no idea. And that's a lie. He knows exactly why he was suspended, because it was while Dorsey was testifying in front of Capitol Hill, and Jones was acting as a member of the media and was asking difficult questions, and that's how he ended up getting censored. That comment from Mark Dice disappeared. Now, there are people saying, they weren't deleted. Maybe it's just YouTube's algorithm. But it seems like the top comments are re-evaluated every 2 hours. So you'll see a top comment that'll be like, here was Sargon's comment. It'll have 600 likes. And then you go back an hour and a half later to the video, and that comment's no longer there. And there's another comment there. So I don't know if it's something that's intentionally being done by Joe Rogan or his team, or if it has to do with YouTube algorithms, or if it has to do with, there's a lot of accusation of like Rogan re-upload, like the video, a lot of times the video will go down when there's a lot of downvotes and then re-up. And there were questions like that. So I don't know exactly what's going on with that. And I do know that Rogan's going to have to answer for this. Like, he's going to have, because the backlash is so strong. Even people that weren't super upset with the video are very upset with the fact that, like, whoa, I thought you were all about free speech. Are you literally censoring comments that are critical of this interview? Is it because it's Jack Dorsey, or is it a YouTube, algorithm thing? I don't know. So I look for Rogan to speak to that. So as to answer the question of, did Rogan sell out? I don't know. I guess you wait to hear what his explanation is. I thought this was a terrible interview, and I've said this about Joe before. I think that I like a lot of his non-political guests, like Steve Ranella that does the Meat Eater show, is one of my favorite guests. I really enjoy watching those podcasts, but I was never subscribed to Rogan. I watched probably a small percentage of his, maybe 1 out of every 10 of his videos that comes out, I'll watch. So I can't speak to what his hardcore supporters are saying that he's been selling out lately. But I do know that I've personally seen how he has a double standard. He goes harder at these right-wing people, and with a lot of these left-wing people, he's very soft. And normally it's like, okay, whatever. But when you're literally talking about what your entire persona was about being against, this idea of mainstream people censoring speech, and you softball him like this, it's a really bad look. And I'll be interested to see what Joe has to say as a result of it. But his fan base is very upset right now. So, hey, if you like this video, please like and subscribe. Hit the bell button so you get alerts. And recommend me some other people if you like it. So I'll be putting more videos out the rest of the week. And have a good one.